Ah, the 80s. Not just the golden age of toys, or cartoons, or comics, but the golden age of video gaming as well. The ultimate arcade in my hometown of Kitchener in the 80s was Zappers. There were quite a few others that popped up around town, but it wasn't enough to just have the games there. You needed the atmosphere as well, the energy in the air, the magic. And the hustle and bustle of downtown Kitchener provided that to the region's most rockin' arcade. Until March of 2000, when Zappers went out, not with a bang, but with a blaze. A massive fire on King Street destroyed a number of businesses, including Zappers. It was the end of an era, and for the past 18 years, I've often thought about the times I would walk up and down the aisles, gazing in wonder at the illuminated screens, cheering on the rock star-like gamers as they broke record after record, all on one quarter. Maybe even spending a few coins myself on some classics like Donkey Kong, Gunsmoke, and Tron. Very few though, since even as a lad, I was pretty frugal. No, much like wandering the aisles of Toys R Us, content to just browse, I enjoyed the energy and atmosphere of Zappers, just as much as mashing buttons, and I've missed it for many years now. Home gaming has come a long way, and eclipsed arcade gaming ages ago. And if you're feeling nostalgic, you can even load up an emulator and play all of your 80s favorites on your computer or mobile gaming device. But what I've come to realize is the magic wasn't in the game, it was in the cabinet, in the joystick, the big plastic buttons with the indent, the dark arcade lit up with screens, like a scene out of Tron. The beautiful cacophony of dozens of arcade and pinball machines blending together into one of my favorite soundtracks of the 80s. Beeps and dings and boops and whistles that said, "It's chaos in here, and it's more fun than you'll ever have." Like a lot of things in life, I let it go. Nothing in the past 18 years had ever come close to the classic 80s atmosphere of Zappers when it comes to gaming. Sure, there were some mini arcades in theaters, and the monstrosity known as Palladium in Mississauga, Ontario, but none of those had the magic. There was a, dare I say, corporate stench about them, the feeling of business hanging in the air more than passion. It was a moment in time I figured could never be recaptured. Like a lot of 80s reboot attempts, I've come to learn that it's the times that's the problem. Society has changed. The carefree, fun-loving vibe of the 80s just isn't here anymore. And no matter how hard companies try to resurrect characters and ideas from the 80s, they just can't recapture that feel, that magic, because people have changed. And what was magical for a person in 1983 will probably not be able to get a person in 2018 to stop looking at their phone for 30 seconds. So I let it go. And then, one day, while I was browsing on YouTube, a recommended video popped up for a place called Pin-Up Arcade Bar in Waterloo. Somebody had opened a classic 80s style pinball and arcade establishment in Waterloo. And best of all, there was only a $5 cover and you could play all the games you wanted. The frugal kid inside this frugal adult's body rejoiced. And so my wife and I skeptically headed out to Waterloo, Kitchener's twin city, to check out this new old-fashioned arcade. The first thing that struck me like a bolt of lightning was the sign. Very 80s. Big, customized, and exciting. As you enter, you're taken down into the basement, where every arcade should be. No sunlight glaring off the screens, making it hard to see. Even Zappers had this problem, and the games next to the window were rarely played. The first thing you're greeted with is an amazing line of pinball machines, and an air hockey table, and some classics like Donkey Kong, Donkey Kong Jr., and some old carnival-style games as well. I'm comfortable enough in my masculinity to admit I got emotional. The goosebumps rose up as I thought, he did it. He actually did it. It wasn't just the pinball machines. It wasn't just the arcade cabinets. It wasn't just the 80s classic tunes blaring on the jukebox one after another. It wasn't just the impressive crowd on a Sunday afternoon. It was the smiles. It was the magic. It was here. It was floating around since 2000 without a home, and it had finally landed at Pinup Arcade in Waterloo. This isn't kind of what it was like, kids. This isn't pretty close to what it was like either. This is what it was like. This was one more visit to an 80s arcade, and proof that in some small, special way, time travel is actually possible, if you just care enough. And here's the man who cares. Shay, the owner, the hardest working man in the arcade, taking the time to personally explain how the games work, as well as running your order up to Fratburger upstairs if you get the munchies. Fire Escape is a great example of the variety at Pinup. There truly is something for everyone here. It's a combination of a pinball machine and an arcade game, and the goal is to balance the ball and keep it from dropping off to the side. It's tough, and like most classic games, it takes a lot of practice. And it's also a great example of how pristine everything is in here. These aren't old secondhand beaters, they're clean, many of them repainted or re-decaled. The classics are here, including Donkey Kong Jr., also in pristine restored condition. The controls on all the consoles are crisp. These things took a lot of abuse over the years, and as the games got older, I'd noticed the controls became less sensitive, which was certain death, along with the certain loss of a quarter. But the controls at Pinup are precise and tight, and the $5 cover with free play takes the frustration out of gaming, since most of these games require a lot of practice. And it's on like Tron! A beautifully restored Tron cabinet was the absolute highlight for me this visit. And since I'm such a Tron fan, I'll be covering this game in its own video later this week in the next installment of the Tron Cast on my YouTube channel. I said there's something for everyone here. It's not just a place for 80s kids, there's 90s games as well. Playing a racing game on your controller in your living room is okay, but there's nothing like sitting in a big arcade machine, using a steering wheel, a shifter, and a brake and gas pedal. How's that for total immersion? And you can race against another player too. And if my 6'2" frame can fit into one of these seats, then almost anybody can. Here's one of my old favorites, Nintendo's Punch-Out! Knocking out Glass Joe is like riding a bike. Once you learn, you never forget. And the undisputed king of 80s arcade coin chompers, Donkey Kong. It may not be the most popular game anymore, but it's a pillar, a cornerstone of gaming. A retro-style arcade needs to have games like these original arcade classics for atmosphere, for history, for the legendary battles of gamers like Billy Mitchell and Steve Wiebe. And here's a blast from the past, Q*bert, my favorite foul-mouthed fuzzy orange cube hopper. Another classic requirement, Pac-Man, or Mrs. Pac-Man in this case. Hello, gorgeous. Playing on a cabinet again really shows me you just can't capture the same feel at home on a game controller, or on a mobile device. They lack the immersion of hunkering into a dedicated arcade cabinet, playing on a classic joystick. The whole world blurs away for a few minutes, and it's just you and the ghosts. There's an intensity and energy that's just not there at home because of a lack of immersion. Games with a million times better graphics and sound at home fail to have the same level of fun because of that. And another one of my childhood favorites, Gunsmoke. You gonna pull those pistols or whistle Dixie? And another 90s classic, Mortal Kombat 2. Before gamers worked together over the internet using headsets, they stood shoulder to shoulder playing multiplayer co-ops, and one of the best was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, a 4-player simultaneous kick and punch classic. And here's one for the more modern gamer, Aliens Extermination, a 2-player simultaneous shooter, featuring pulse rifles with ammo counters and grenade launchers. I'd never played this game before, but I'm a huge Aliens fan, and it is intense. You better believe I was channeling Hudson's last stand against these bugs. Game over, man. Game over. And that wasn't the only two-person shooter based on a James Cameron classic. I got to fight the future again in another one of my childhood favorites, Terminator 2 Judgment Day. And my God, the pinball machine collection here. It ranges from classics to brand new entries like Guardians of the Galaxy and Valar Morghulis. The Game of Thrones pinball game is a song of ice and fun. And another arcade classic, Burger Time. And incidentally, if you work up an appetite and it's burger time for you, you can order from Frat Burger upstairs, and they'll bring you your food down to the arcade. There's a bar too, and an area to sit and dine and enjoy the tunes too, so it's a great place for a date night or an outing with the whole family. Magic. There's no other word to describe Pinup Arcade. It's the same magical atmosphere of your favorite arcade in the 80s, and it's all thanks to the heart and soul poured into every machine by the owner, Shay. I get a lot of compliments about my 80s toy museum videos, and I make the videos the way I do because I genuinely love this stuff. It brings a smile to my face. Shay's the same way. He's poured his passion into making your experience at Pinup a special one. He had a smile on his face every time I saw him this day. And so did a lot of other people too. I didn't see a single cell phone pulled out during my visit. Being just down the road from two universities ensures a regular influx of gamers interacting. Nobody wishing they were somewhere else. They were in it, like we used to be all those decades ago, enjoying some old-fashioned 80s style fun, being courteous to each other, and being present, in the moment, here, now. Just like we were in the 80s. And I'll be here many more times to come because, just like Flynn, the 80s style arcade lives. Thanks to Pinup Arcade Bar in Waterloo. If you're in the area, or even if you're not, and miss the good old days of arcades like I did, do yourself a favor and check out Pinup. Just remember, no tilting, dodge the barrels, flip the jab, and always fight for the users. Got a classic arcade memory? Scroll down and go to town. Share if you like the video, and to join the tribe, hit subscribe. Nerdmas Day.